Looking to sound like you know what's going on in the world? Pop culture, social strategy, comedy, and other funny stuff? Well, join the club and settle in for the Jeff Dwoskin Show. It's not the podcast we deserve, but the podcast we all need, with your host, Jeff Dwoskin.
All right, Warren, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. You get the show going each and every week, and this week was no exception. Welcome, everybody, to Live from Detroit, the Jeff Dwoskin Show. As always, I am your host, Jeff Dwoskin. Great to have you back for another rockin' episode. That's right, we're going to be rocking around the clock one more time. We've got Don Most with us today. That's right, Ralph Malph from Happy Days, thus completing our Happy Days trilogy. Episode 110 with Anson Potsy Weber Williams. Episode 114 with Mary and Mrs. C. Ross. And now, episode 116 with Don Most. The Happy Days trilogy is now complete. Don Most, actor, singer, director. Loved him in Star Trek Voyager, The Great Buck Howard, Glee, EDtv. Don is also an accomplished singer. We talk all about that as well during the episode, and where you can stream some of his amazing music. We got so much coming up. We talk Happy Days and so much more, and that's coming up in just a few minutes. Oh my, that expensive sound effect can only mean one thing. A thank you's in order to all my fans. Would you believe Live from Detroit, the Jeff Dwoskin Show is popping all over Apple podcast chart rankings, and I want to thank you all for it. We're charting in the film interview category in the United States, Great Britain, Canada, Netherlands, India, Portugal. Amazing. Thanks to all of you for listening. And to the rest of the world, what's going on? Why aren't you on board? Come on. Can't you see what Great Britain, Canada, Netherlands, India, Portugal, and the United States have already known for years? That Live from Detroit, the Jeff Dwoskin Show is where it's at. But in all seriousness, thank you all very much. It's fun seeing the show pop on the charts. If I may reflect for a quick second, when I started this podcast and I started to get to meet all these TV, film, singers, writers, directors that created things that I grew up with, it was just so exciting. And I've loved this journey. And so when I was able to talk to a few people from Happy Days, I just was so over the moon about it. You know, when I got to talk to Potsy and Mrs. C, and you're going to hear Ralph Malph in a minute, Don Most, it's just so cool. So I definitely check out the other interviews as well. 110 with Anson Williams, 114 with Marion Ross, and then, of course, stay tuned for some fun conversation with Don Most. As I was preparing for all the interviews, it's interesting, like with Anson Williams, we talk a lot about how Mickey Dolenz was almost the Fonz. I mean, how crazy would that have been? Like the whole idea, like how different the show would have been had that happened. With Marion Ross, we talked about how the entire cast played softball and went across the country to meet the fans, which played a huge part in Happy Days becoming one of the biggest shows of all time. In this episode, we talk about jumping the shark, the term jump the shark, which a lot of people don't realize came from Happy Days. And Don Most and I, we talk about that episode in particular. That's coming up in a little bit. So as you kind of dig into the Happy Days stuff, you find a lot of the trivia. Like I didn't know that in the Smithsonian Institute, the Fonzie leather jacket they have there is actually a replica because the original one was stolen off the set. And also that Henry Winkler was originally offered the role of Danny Zuko in Grease, but he couldn't sing. So he turned the part down, and John Travolta turned that into a classic. Maybe y'all can help me get Henry Winkler on the podcast. Tweet at the Fonz and let him know he should be on Live from Detroit, the Jeff Dwoskin Show. Tell him you heard great interviews from Mrs. C, Potsy, Ralph Malph, and now you need to hear from the Fonz. Let's do it. Head to social media. Help me make it happen. In the meantime, I do want to thank everyone for supporting the sponsors. When you support the sponsors, you're supporting us here at Live from Detroit, the Jeff Dwoskin Show. And that's how we keep the lights on. Today's interview sponsor, Arnold's Drive-In, located in the heart of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Named Milwaukee's #1 greasy spoons 30 years in a row. Looking to hang out and eat good food? Come on over to Arnold's Drive-In. Pull up your car for our in-car service or head on in, grab a booth, drop a coin into the jukebox, and rock around the clock. dance along with your friends, play pinball, and reminisce over good times. Good meals and good times await you at Arnold's Drive-In. All right. Well, I'm hungry. I don't know about you. Gonna go get me a hamburger. In the meantime, get ready for my conversation with Don Most. It's really awesome. If you listen to the Anson Williams conversation, I asked Anson a lot about watching Robin Williams transform into Mork from Mork. I asked Don the same question because he was there too to get a different point of view. All great, all amazing, and that's coming up right now. Enjoy. All right, everyone, I'm excited to introduce you to my next guest, actor, director, singer, but I'll always have a place in my heart as Ralph Malph from Happy Days. Ladies and gentlemen, Don Most. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. It's good to be with you.
Oh, it's so great to have you here. Thanks for hanging with me on my podcast. Much appreciated.
Oh, sure. My pleasure.
I had the pleasure of kind of getting to know you as a singer as I was getting ready for this podcast, which was great. I listened to a lot of tunes and I want to work up to that.
Okay.
I was reading Marion Ross's book and she had a nice little chapter on you that you participated in her book for her. But then she opened up with a little bit about how you were very into Al Jolson. And at your Bar Mitzvah, you even got up with the band and sang Al Jolson. And that was sort of like the start of the whole acting career, singing lessons. That seemed to be a big piece of your origin story. So how does a 9-year-old become obsessed with Al Jolson?
Yeah, because I was 9 when I saw the movie, The Jolson Story, the biopic on him. And the movie just, I don't know, it had this really profound impact on me. It was a combination, it was a really good story. Obviously, it was a big hit at the time. And Jolson had been, considered the world's greatest entertainer in his heyday into the early the teens and the 20s. He made the very first talking movie, The Jazz Singer, because he was the biggest star. So it was a combination of the story. Jolson's talent came through, even though it was Larry Parks playing Jolson, and Larry did a great job capturing Jolson, but it was Jolson's voice that came through in a big way for me, and his charisma, his amazing talent. I wound up watching the movie. It was on something called $1 Million Movie they had in New York on Channel 9, I remember. And they would show one movie for the entire week, and they would show it twice a night out during the week and 4 times Saturday and 4 times Sunday. So after I watched it the first time on a Tuesday night, I think I watched it every time after that. So I probably watched it like 12 times that week. And I was 9 years old and I was just mesmerized by everything about Jolson and the story. And I went out and bought his records and I would go start singing along to Jolson and sing for my grandparents and, that kind of thing. And then by the time I was 13, I think, when I got up at my bar mitzvah, and because there was a good band and they were playing some of that music. So somebody told them, I don't know, I can't remember how it happened, but they said, come on up. And they said, what song do you want to do? And I said, Rockabye Your Baby with a Dixie Melody. It was a big Jolson hit, and it was one of my favorites. So I did it, and people were like, whoa, holy cow, talking to my parents, and they realized how much I wanted to pursue this. So they were supportive, and as long as I still doing my regular schooling and all that. And they found through a friend of theirs this school, a studio in Manhattan run by a guy named Charlie Lowe, an old vaudevillian performer. He and his wife had this studio for kids and teenagers for singing, acting, dancing, and all that. So that's when I started going there. And it led to me, actually, I got picked from there to sing in a nightclub revue when I was 14, 15 years old, up in the Catskill Mountains one summer. And I was singing with 7 other of those students that had been handpicked, doing all the hotel nightclubs up in the Catskills. And I thought I had made it big time, So then I switched gears, and I switched into a very more serious acting class, a workshop, put the music aside for a while. And I really got into the acting side at that point, which then eventually led to me going out to California 4 years later and landing some roles that led up to Happy Days.
Marion mentioned that you went through the same kind of process as her when she was a young girl, which was having to break it to your parents that you wanted to be an actor. She had like a similar situation, but they seemed to like really embrace this was going to be your decision.
Like I said, as long as it wasn't interfering with regular schooling, they were very supportive. And, then when I was in high school and approaching that time when you're looking into colleges, they felt very strongly that I should at least go to college and have something to fall back on, something substantial, and not go to college for theater, but to go to college for something totally different and not quit, not after high school graduation, then just pursue acting. Now, I had been doing pretty well by then in New York. I grew up in Brooklyn, and like I said, I was in that class. And then I met a woman who became my manager and got me out to meet agents, and I was starting to audition. And I started getting a lot of national TV commercials. That's how I got my Screen Actors Guild card, and a few small TV things that wasn't a lot of television shot in New York back then. I got a few things and a lot of commercials, but they said after college, but at least you'll have that as the fallback. So I went to Lehigh University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, entered as an engineering major, because that was what I was in school. I was really good in math and science. My grandfather had been an engineer. My two uncles were engineers. My cousin was studying to be an engineer. So that was the best bet, or I guess it made the most sense. I did that. But after one semester, I transferred out of the engineering school because I was spending more time. I was missing classes because I was taking a bus from Pennsylvania into Manhattan for auditions, and missing classes. And you can't really be an engineering major, I think, if you're not going to class. So I was transferred out of that school and went into the business school, and I was able to get by in there. And I was doing plays and theater in college as well for fun. But then I went out. That's how they felt. And they were right. I mean, it was the smart thing to do, and it all worked out fine, because then I went out to California after my junior year for the summer, and I wound up staying because I was starting to get work and land some roles, and took 6 months off of college at my agent's suggestion, and said, you can go back, but you got some momentum, keep it going, because I was landing some roles, and not that long after the series of auditions for Happy Days.
There's something about Brooklyn, right, where you're from. There must be something in the water with the people with voices from Brooklyn. Neil Diamond, Barbra Streisand, Marvin Hamlish, Gershwin. Something.
Yeah, Gershwin too. And Neil Diamond and Barbra Streisand, we all went to the same high school too.
Maybe we can pinpoint it to a water fountain at that high school.
At Erasmus Hall High School, yes. I think it's a great training ground growing up in a place like Brooklyn, and I would think Detroit too, Chicago, and you have to constantly be adapting to things, the pace and the diversity and the stimulus that you have, and the energy. I think it's a really good sort of environment, a good breeding ground for people pursuing acting and in a creative way. But for some reason in the acting, so many people come from there. And that same high school I mentioned, Barbara Stanwyck went there, and Eli Wallach, and a lot of others like Mae West. It goes on and on. So yeah, there is something about growing up in the streets of Brooklyn that I think lends itself to an actor's psyche.
So before Happy Days, you landed a role in Emergency.
Yeah.
Police Story and Room 222.
Room 222, yes.
222, Room 222. The interesting thing I saw about Emergency was that was also John Travolta's first acting.
I didn't even know that. That's interesting. I didn't know that was John's first, I guess, TV job out when he came out to LA from New Jersey. He was, similar, the tri-state area, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey.
When I was kind of referencing that to see if, you read something, you want to make sure it's right. Then I realized that Mr. T and Tina, which was Pat Morita's show, was actually a spinoff of Welcome Back, Kotter, which I did not know.
Oh, wow. I'm not sure I remember that. That's interesting. You've got all this great trivia that...
I know. You start to go down these rabbit holes. I was like, well, it's the only reason I even noticed that was because when I was looking at his IMDb, it said Vinnie Barbarino under Mr. T and Tina. And the only reason Mr. T and Tina caught my eyes because I knew Pat Morita, when he was on Happy Days, was also doing that. And he was on Sanford and Son and MASH. And so I was like, oh, Vinnie Barbarino, was that a spinoff of? It seemed like everything was a spinoff back then. If it wasn't the original show, it was a spinoff of a really good show.
Yeah. There were a lot of, Mork and Mindy was a spinoff from Happy Days, and Laverne and Shirley was a spinoff from Happy Days.
Yeah, there's so many great shows that just had those origins. So, all right, so let's talk about Happy Days. You get the audition for Happy Days. There was already been one pilot at this point. You weren't part of the original pilot.
That's right. Yeah, Anson Williams played Potsy in the original, and Ron Howard played Richie in the original, and Marion Ross was the mom. But they had a different father, played by Harold Gould, and I think a different daughter. I think there was a daughter. It was an Erin. And there was no Ralph, there was no Fonzie, and it was like 1972, I guess. And it didn't sell, didn't get on the air. But then, like a year later, a year and a half later, American Graffiti comes out, big hit about taking place in the 50s, and Grease comes out on Broadway, and again about the 50s. So I think some of the executives at ABC are going, wait a minute, we had a show about the 50s, and they went back to Gary and said, we think maybe we should revisit this. But they were telling Gary that Ron and Anson, it's now like a year and a half later, and they were concerned they would maybe be too old by the time they did it to play high school. And Gary was like, no, they could still do it. But the network made Gary test them again. Even though they had done it, they had to test along with about 8 or 10 other hopefuls, myself being one of the other hopefuls, of all these different pairings of Richies and Potsy's. I was auditioning they put me up for the role of Potsy, and that's what I wound up after. It was my third time back was the screen test, and that was an experience that day. It was a long day.
I had read that you also auditioned for Richie.
No,
No,
it's not the case. I did not. But there was some other. Robbie Benson was there that day screen testing. He was reading for Richie. Robbie Benson, who I knew from New York. We had done a commercial together, a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup commercial, which is on. They were playing it all over again as a retro commercial, which I did when I was 18. But so there was Robbie, who I knew auditioning for Richie. They obviously stuck with Ron and Anson and said, no, Gary, you're right. They still look, they could be high school. And so they got cast again. But then what they told my agent, they liked some of the executives, very impressed with my screen test. And they said to Gary, you should put him in the show, make him, find a role for him, and he should be in the show too. That's how there was a small part in the pilot episode of a guy named Ralph Malph, and who was into cars and stuff. And they didn't tell me much more than that. He's into cars. And from the dialogue in it, he had a couple of scenes, not anything big, but a few little scenes. He was a wisecracker. But if you look back at him in those early days, especially in this first 4, 5, 6 episodes, he was almost a little cooler, because he was like the guy that had this cool car and maybe had some women around him too. And Richie and Potsy knew him, but they weren't like really tight. But then they started getting me more and more involved. And then we became like really good friends. And the character changed a little, evolved somewhat over the next few years.
I think that's amazing. And it's such a kind of a testament and a good lesson, I think, for anyone in acting. It's like, always give it 1,000%. Because you could have easily gone in there thinking, oh, Ron Howard and Anson Williams, they already did this pilot. This is they're just bringing me in to check some boxes here. You know what I mean? And they loved you so much. They're like, this guy, we need this guy. We need him in the show. So that's really cool. That's a great story. Yeah,
you're right. I mean, there was a certain amount of the intimidation factor when I saw Ron. I didn't know really Anson at the time, but then through the rumor mill, I started hearing they had done this pilot. But of course I knew Ron because everybody knew Ron. So I was very well aware of Ron, especially because we were about the same age, both had red hair. And when I was young in Brooklyn, people used to think that they'd call me Opie because we looked kind of like each other. But when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, I'd have people coming up to me and thinking I was him. So you can imagine how weird it was for me. Now here I am screen testing for this show, and there's Ron, who I've been called by his character name when I was a kid. It was pretty bizarre. But you're right. If I didn't really give it my all, although about halfway through the day, I thought there was no chance I was very. It was a series of things that happened during that day that I was feeling like, oh man, the stars are against me. The stars are just against me. And I was like, but in a way it was a good thing, I'll tell you, because sometimes you could try too hard. And what happened is it kind of made me let go a little bit, and it was like, and there's a certain amount of power, but there's a certain amount of getting more centered when you let go a little bit. And you could, it's fine. It's that fine line. You got to find that right balance, not trying too hard and not giving a damn either. That's not good either. So anyway, it kind of put me in a good place, I think.
What were some of the things that were kind of red flags that you thought it was not going well for you?
Well, the scene, when I first did this, first we had to prepare a scene, and that went fine. I thought, okay, I did pretty good. But then what happened was afterwards they were having everybody they had this young gal there, a very attractive gal, and they were going to have everybody do like an improvisation with her. So they say, what you're going to be doing is you're going out on your first date with this girl. You've been wanting to go out with her. And then it was just going to be an improv, no dialogue written. So I'm getting ready. And what happened was I had just turned 20, but most of the other actors there were some that were not even 18 yet. And the girl wasn't 18 yet. So they don't have as much time by the union's rules, much time to work with. The workday is shorter if you're under 18. So they were getting everybody out of the way first. And then by the time it came to me, they said, oh, the girl, we couldn't keep her anymore because it was, so you're going to do your improv with Harvey Miller over there. He was like one of the writers. He was one of the writers of Odd Couple that Gary, worked with. And, here's a guy like, I don't know, he might have been 40 years old. I'm doing my improv with Harvey Miller, with this guy, and everybody else got to do it with this great-looking gal, and I'm feeling, I'm screwed, So they said, well, we'll give you a different situation, and I didn't think that was a good thing at the time. And then by the time they got, the third thing they were doing was an interview on camera with you, because they wanted to see who you were too, and because if you're going to be on a show and they're going to be working with you a long time, they wanted to get a sense of who you were too. By the time we got to the interview, I felt, and I'm waiting around again for everybody else. And by the time it got to me, I was like, this isn't going to happen. So I was like, maybe I was just really loose, and it might have worked to my advantage. I don't know.
It's funny you mentioned that you looked like Opie when you were younger. I read, again, I'm surprised you may get an FBI warning. Someone was digging into you on Google a lot, but it was me. But no, I read that the only hesitation Gary Marshall had was having two redheads on the show.
Yes. Yeah, and I thought that, I was surprised that they went ahead and put, if they cast Ron, then I was kind of surprised that they were putting me on as one of the friends, because it's two redheads. But I guess the executives, I should be thankful. I found out later, it was a couple of years later that I found out that the executive that really was standing up and saying you should cast Donny, and I was going by Donny then, was Michael Eisner, who was an executive at Paramount Studios at the time, and then went on to become like the head of Disney later on, and
sure,
become one of the biggest executives in the business. It was Michael Eisner. So years later, and I ran into him somewhere, and I said, I never knew about this. I have you probably to thank for this, and there might have been other people too, but somebody had told me it was Michael Eisner. So anyway, that was kind of cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Now you'd be like, did you get like a free pass at Disney World because of it? He's like, you come anytime you want, Don.
I should have asked. for that. Yeah.
Oh, man. So talk to me about the evolution of the character and how your catchphrase came into it. I'll let you say it. I don't want to butcher it. But there was a lot of catchphrases on that show. It was
there were.
But you had your own, and so
it was sit on it, and got it. Well, Henry, of course, and there were several others. Well, I could probably answer both of those questions in one, in a way, because part of the evolution of the character happened. Some of it, what happened was, like I was saying early on, I didn't have that much to do. I'd get like a scene here, maybe a scene towards the beginning of the show, and then a scene towards the end. And then Richie and Potsy were mainly involved, and the family. And Fonzie would have a scene here and there too. Henry and I were like peripheral characters. But then they started building me more and more. But part of that was a combination that they had to come up with more for me, a little bit here and there. But I was like always into trying to come up with stuff that wasn't even in the script. So like I would come up with ideas to embellish, to make my part a little bigger, and come up with some things. And the director, who was Jerry Paris, who was a brilliant director, he was the guy who directed most of the Dick Van Dyke shows back before us and won an Emmy his first year directing. He was an actor before that in some famous movies, but he was fabulous. He became like a mentor of mine, and we were very close. And Jerry loved when I'd come up with an idea that was in a script, and he'd love it and it would stimulate him and he'd go, oh, yeah, yeah. And then it'd spur him to come up with something on top of that. And then, oh, yeah, yeah. So we were like connecting and really working well. And the writers and the producers were seeing what we were doing that wasn't in the script. And that helped to sort of build my role. And it got a little bigger and bigger and bigger. And as the years developed, and Jerry was more like Ralph than I was, because in real life, I was never the comedian. I was more the quiet kind of honor student guy. I was more like Richie was in high school. I was not my friends. I knew guys that liked to be the funniest guy in the room, but that wasn't me. I was like kind of quiet and more shy and everything. So Jerry was kind of like Ralph, I mean, he cracked jokes all the time and loved to get laughs, So my character started, I was getting influenced by Jerry and starting to go more and more in his direction a little bit. And when he would crack a joke and really score with it in front of everybody, then he'd go, I still got it. I still got it. Something like that. He'd do it different ways. So we'd always crack up, he'd go, I still got it. One day doing a scene, shooting Friday night, in front of an audience, and we're getting ready to shoot the scene in Arnold's. And it was a scene where Ralph's going to crack some kind of joke. And it hit me. I go up to Ron. I don't tell anybody else. I said, Ron, be ready. I'm going to do something that's not in the script here. So just be ready. I didn't tell him what, And then Ralph cracks the joke at Arnold's and they kind of laughing. And then I went, I still got it, just like that. Or I still got it. I can't remember which way I went with it. Everybody, they all cracked up. Jerry loved it. And the audience liked it too, even though they weren't in on it. But I guess they just thought it was funny. So from that point forward, they started writing it in for me, in different situations. And, and then it would be like, we're in some predicament and I go, even in danger, I still got it, or even in even in Waukesha, I still got it, or whatever it might have been, It was a real trip for me. About 15 years later, I will never forget this. I'm watching, some network show, somebody's being interviewed, and something happens, and then they went, after they went, I still got it. And I went, holy shit, and then it started coming into the vernacular more and more. I'm hearing it, more and more. And I was like, wow, that is so surreal to me because I know where it came from. It wasn't anybody, it was Jerry via me,
It's universal and people could adapt it to themselves, which would be different than just if I was at a party and all of a sudden I went, hey.
Right. Yeah.
That would seem like that would be a little weirder.
It depends on what the conversation was.
Right.
It might fit in.
Yours is a little more adaptable.
Mine's a little more adaptable. Yeah. I would agree.
So when Happy Days started off, it's a 1-camera shoot. So it's more like a mini movie. Then it eventually moves to a 3-camera in front of a live audience. But part of that transition was recognizing Henry Winkler and the Franz were just exploding. Mm-hmm. What was it like being on the show and making that transition on the show yourself under the umbrella of all this Fonzimania going on?
Wow. We didn't have none of the cast. We were thrilled, we were thrilled because first of all, we saw we were there in the bird's eye view watching Henry create this character and see it evolve. And he was doing fabulous, wonderful work, from an actor's point of view and watching what he was doing. And it was like we were always waiting to see what he was going to do next. And he was doing such a great job with it. So then to see it catch on like that was exciting. And we felt really happy for him and it was great for the show. It was great for him. It was great for all of us. And it was something to witness. We had experiences where we'd go out into public when they'd sent us on these publicity tours and we'd get out in the real world instead of being insulated in the soundstage doing the thing. And you don't know how many people are watching it. And then you go out. And Henry and I attended, there was one event where Henry Hansen and I went. Ron was shooting something and couldn't be there. And we get to this thing and there's like, Anson might have told you the story. There's like, we see thousands of people and we're going, oh, there must be a concert going on or something around here, And then Henry says that they're here for us. And was like, what, And then they're coming over to the car and rocking the car and everything, I mean, we were like, what? We felt like, the Beatles or whatever. And then there was, we couldn't even get through. And then there was another time when Henry and I went to this shopping mall as part of a publicity tour, appearing at the Paramus Mall in New Jersey. And we get there, and there were like you could see so many people there, and a lot of the ladies were there, happy to see for the Fonz, I guess, yelling and screaming, and the police, the security realized they had those sawhorses, in front or whatever to keep us, because they were going to come around and take pictures or whatever with sign autographs. But we were there maybe a minute or two, and they realized that this was going to be a danger. They thought it was a dangerous situation, and they go, "You got to get out of here." We're going, "What? We got to get you out of here." Well, we're surrounded. There's nowhere to go. There was a fountain behind us that was like with a wall and all this. And they said, "You're going up that way." I said, "What?" Henry and I looked at each other. "You got to get out," because they were surging forward, So there's Henry and I climbing up this ledge, up the wall, and to get out of there. And then they whisk us into a car, tell us to lie down, send another limo as a decoy. I mean, it was like, what is going on here? It's like you're in the Twilight Zone, So I saw what was going on, and, of course, and Henry he was the number one star on television, it was a craze, it was unbelievable. But like I said, we were all very thrilled about it. And, we had to adapt. There were times when you wanted, the writers, I think, were and Gary Marshall was and Jerry, very perceptive and smart. And they made sure that they balanced it so that there would be stories that featured Ralph. There'd be stories that featured Potsy. There'd be stories that featured Joni, and, that everybody got their due. So that really kept it, in a good place where we were all fine.
That's cool. I had seen an interview with Ron Howard where he was a little uneasy. He was fine with the transition, but I think at one point they wanted to change the name of the show to Fonzie's Happy Days.
Right. And he said, that's not what I signed on for.
He wasn't into that. However, one transition that did kind of take that name was during the early run, you, Ron, and Henry went animated with the Fonz and the Happy Days gang.
Right.
A Hanna-Barbera cartoon.
Right.
With Dee Dee Kahn.
That's right.
As Cupcake, who you later starred in a play with, Middletown.
And before that, she appeared on Happy Days in 2 episodes as my girlfriend.
Really?
Yeah.
That is...
Before she ever did Grease.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So many connections. So many threads.
Yeah. So the cartoon,
of course, had a dog named Mr. Cool.
Right. Frank Welker was the voice.
And you were trying to get back to 1957 Milwaukee. As you travel through time.
Okay. I didn't even remember that, but thank you for that.
I just thought it was funny because it was called the Fonz and the Happy Days Gang. I'm like, oh, well, they finally at least got to name something with...
Yeah, it was a good, it was a good experience because to do a voice for a cartoon, it was fun. I'd never done it. And then I wound up, it kind of led to me doing some of the same people were involved in another cartoon called Dungeons and Dragons. And I did that, and it ran, I think, 3 seasons. And it was really fun one. I liked that one. And I get people who, it sort of became a little bit of a, cult thing because a lot of people still remember that and bring it up. It was good to experience doing that. And then I did another one, Teen Wolf, another cartoon after that. So nice to experience a lot of different things.
And as yourself, since we're talking animated for a second, you were yourself on Family Guy.
Yes, that was fun. That was a funny bit. That was a very funny bit. And they wanted me to, they were having fun with me changing my name from Donny to Don. And they didn't know, I guess they called my agent and said, we'd love Don to come in and do this little thing that we put together. If he doesn't want to do it, because they didn't know if I'd, take offense at the joke they were doing. They said, we're going to do it anyway. We'll get someone else, but we'd rather have him, So I read it and I thought it was very, very funny. And I said, oh yeah, I'll do that. I'll go in and do it. And then they did they did a great job with the chorus of the music that's coming up behind me as my figure, my statue, whatever, Donny Most rises from the mist.
Every 100 years.
Yeah. It was a kind of a takeoff from Brigadoon, I guess, the play. Yeah, every 100 years, if something's just right, Donny Most. And then I rose from the mist. And then at the end, I go, what was the exact line? It's Don Most now. something like that.
Let me set you up. Johnny Most, Johnny Most, he was Ralph on Happy Days.
That's right. They go, it's Don Most now. and then I start going back down as this great chorus behind. It was a beautifully done piece they did. It was very funny. And people loved it. I get a lot of comments about that, great comments.
Family Guy is brilliant. I mean, that was just like right in the middle of a scene. They're just berry picking and they right. just Stewie says to Brian, this is the exact location where right. every 100 years.
Right. I know, like out of just this total non sequitur.
Yeah. So funny. So consistency wasn't a thing on Happy Days. You had two sets of parents.
Yeah.
No, I'm just
and there were three different Chucks.
Right. Man. So the Jump the Shark episode.
Yeah.
It's fun to have watched the series at the time, and later that kind of ties into that became such a pop culture reference now to like for any show. And I think a lot of people that make that reference don't even realize it comes from Happy Days.
Right.
But
yeah.
This is but the whole thing was your character's fault. I think it was your fault he had to jump the shark in the episode.
Why is it my fault?
I think I was rewatching it. It seemed like you did something and then Fonz had to jump a shark. I don't
Oh, you mean like I did something and then cornered him into having to do this. Oh, okay. Maybe I can't, not remembering exactly, but yeah, it was probably I did something stupid and then he had to save face or something. I don't know.
What was it like in the writer's room where they're like, he's still got to have his jacket on. He can't not be wearing his jacket even though he's water skiing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they probably thought, hey, it would be really funny, like, hey, he's in a bathing suit with, he still has the leather jacket. It'll be, that'll be great. And I'm sure a lot of people thought it was pretty funny, but I remember somebody sent me a link. I totally forgot. I kind of remembered, but not to this extent. Ron Howard was being interviewed by somebody, and they brought up the jump the shark thing, and he said in the interview, he said, well, it was really in a way Donny Most who kind of came up with that phrase, and I'm going, I did? What was he talking about? And then I remembered. He said we were doing a reading of the script on Monday around the table with the writers and the cast and producers, and when it was over, I thought the script, I felt like the scripts were, and I'd been complaining, talking to Ron and going, I felt like the scripts were starting to get really silly and going downhill in ways. So Ron said in the interview, so Donny comes up to me after the reading and takes a moment, he looks at me and he says, now they got the Fonz jumping a shark. And I was like, wow, I think I remember saying that. So, and then Ron said, I said to Donny, well, look, we're number one. They must know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. But he said, but Donny was not very happy with the script, thought it was. And so I said, now they got the Fonz jumping a shark. Now, somebody else coined that phrase, not knowing I had said that to Ron, but I said it first.
Anson, when I talked to Anson, he shared a lot about the worst script he thought ever, which was...
Oh, yeah, I know what you're going to say. I know exactly the story.
Which was the Mork from Mork episode.
Right. And then it became a great show.
It became a great show. But I was just curious, what was it like from your point of view? Anson kind of gave his, but what was it? You were there at the birth of Robin Williams. I mean, he was still, I know he had a reputation as a great improviser, but just watching this person at work, just creating this magic on the fly, it just must have been such a magical moment.
Yeah, it was. It was definitely something that really stood out in a big way. I remember I got to the soundstage a little late. No, I wasn't late, but our call was later than everyone else's because Anson and I weren't going to be in it was the day they have cameras rehearsing with the cameras and coordinating everything. And they had a hard time casting the role because the person they originally wanted didn't want to do it. Then they finally cast somebody and then he wound up quitting, because we all thought it was like one of the worst scripts. And, this guy from outer space. And it was like, what? And then so now it's Thursday, it's like Wednesday night and they don't have the role cast. And we're shooting it on Friday, And Thursday is camera blocking day. So Gary's sister, Ronnie Hallen, had seen, and Al Molinaro too, I think, had seen Robin at the Comedy Store on Sunset Boulevard in L.A. And they said, we've seen this guy. He's perfect for this. Because Robin used to do in his stand-up act this alien kind of thing. He actually did where he was playing this alien and he did like a lot of funny noises and this and that. So I didn't know that till later. So they brought Robin in to audition, and like he blew Gary Marshall and everyone away. I think he stood on his head and was doing all this crazy stuff. So I walk in now. So my call is until a little bit later. And Anson, we go into the soundstage and there's like this palpable buzz, electricity. I can't even describe it. And you just felt it as soon as we got on the soundstage. And then somebody comes up and says, "Where do you see this guy? Oh my God, you won't believe it. This guy is like genius and he's amazing." And people left and right. So then we go up to an area we watching the rehearsal and then seeing Robin for the first time, and he's doing all this stuff, that wasn't in the script, and some of it is probably from his stand-up act that he did, but then he's still improvising more, and we're like, oh, our jaws are dropping, like, who is this guy? Is from outer space, he's playing. This guy is. Where did he come from? And it turned into, it was one of the worst scripts, and it turned into, a great episode, and he had his own show. By 5 days later, we found out he's got his own show now. I mean, it was that quick.
A couple other things I read. You met your wife on Happy Days?
Yes, it was what turned out to be it was not the last year of filming, but it was my last year because my contract ended. It was the 7th season. That's when Morgan had a guest starring role. She wound up doing 2 episodes, but we met during that first one and got along very quickly, and I was very enamored with her, and I took her out for dinner before we shot the show, and we started dating, and then 2 years later got married, and we're having our 40th wedding anniversary in about 2.5 weeks.
Mazel tov. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Did she ever hold it over your head that she smooched the Fonz?
No, not really. But that was the year. Then after that season, both Ron and I opted not to renew. The show ran for 4 more years after that, but Ron and I were no longer on it after that.
Do you regret leaving at that point?
No, I don't. It had come to that time, where I'd been doing that role for 7 years, and I wanted to have a career as an actor that lasted beyond that. And I was worried that, you get so associated with a role, especially a role like that on a sitcom. And I was so different from the character. And like I said, I thought the scripts were not what they had been. And it was a combination of that. I didn't tell this story until about a year ago, but I actually, I was leaning towards not coming back. But then I said, you know what? My manager and I came up with an idea. And he said, tell the powers that be at Paramount or whoever you have to talk to, that they were now offering me the biggest raise that I had ever been offered because I was no longer on contract. So, they had raises each year built into the contract, and maybe you'd renegotiate a little bit. But now that I was no longer on the contract, they were offering me by far the biggest raise that I had been offered. And I said, tell them, forget about the raise. I'll come back without a raise. I'll do it for the same money, but guarantee me a part in a ABC TV movie or supporting role in a feature film at Paramount so I can do something different and show that. And don't even give me a raise. And they wouldn't do it.
Fools.
So that's when I said, okay. Then I gave them a good chance. Gave them a good chance.
Did they not invite you back for the final episode?
No. No.
That stinks. That's like a disservice to the fans too. I mean, you as well, but I mean, like as fans sitting at home, you want to see everything kind of culminate. There's a feeling that you have from home that
absolutely. And I think it was a pretty reasonable request after being on a show for 7 years, and they know what I'm up against as an actor. They know how difficult it's going to be after, and I'm telling them, don't even give me a raise.
They could have done better by you. I agree. It's
unfortunate, but luckily it was hard. It was very hard to break away, but I kept chipping away. And now in the last 4 or 5 years, like I've been getting some really great, been busier than I've been in a long time. I did 4 movies from last November to May. I did 4 film projects, playing completely different roles. Went from playing a pastor to a polygamist to a prison guard to a king to a career criminal to the owner of a hockey team and the CEO. I mean, it's running the kind of thing that what I've been wanting to do always, playing all different kinds of roles. And I was doing it even before, on television too. I did Star Trek Voyager, where I played a two-parter, a villain, and then a show called The Crow, and I played a psychiatrist, and alcoholic retired ball player in a movie, independent film called The Ankles. And I won Best Supporting Actor in a feature film at a big film festival recently for Lost Heart, a movie that's on Amazon Prime, where I play a small town pastor. And awards for this viral vignettes that I'm a big part of them. Actually, I've acted in 3 episodes. I've directed one of them, and I'm one of the exec producers. Viral vignettes, and it's at the Barrymore Film Festival right now, and people can go and, if they look up the Barrymore Film Festival and look for Harvest Time, and it's the one Harvest Time is not part of Viral Vignettes, but that's the one I did with Anson Williams, where we play completely different characters. It's very dark comedy. Very. Oh,
I watched it.
Yeah.
It was great. You're brothers, and yes. Anson needs your kidney. Yes. And you, you play a real. I'll say jerk, but
yeah. Oh yeah. I'm a jerk, all right. I mean, I'm a kind of a shithead, But it's a really well written piece. It's really, it's like dark, like David Mamet meets Neil Simon or something like that. It's really good writing, and we had a great time doing it. And we won several awards at some of the festivals. I got Best Actor, the New York Long Island Film Festival, and Anson and I won Best Duo and several. So, there's a lot of cool stuff going on. And Viral Vignettes is another one. The same producer, David Levin, produced both of those. That's at the Barrymore Festival now. People could go on.
I watched the Marshall Plan. I started your family trying to talk you into the real world again.
Oh, yes.
But it's fun stuff. It's fun stuff.
Yeah, it is. It's some really good material. So as I'm saying, it took a while. There was some tough times, when I told my agent when I left Happy Days, I said, I'd like to try to just do film and theater. Now, this was back in 80, 81, and it was very hard back then to go from TV to film. Not like today, where there's a bridge between the two mediums. You go back and forth. People who are doing movies do TV and vice versa. Back then, it was like film actors and television, especially sitcoms. So it was very hard. But I told my agent, I don't want to do television for a while. I would like to just try to do film and theater. Well, I got theater, but I went 9 months. I couldn't even get an audition for a film. They wouldn't even, that's how it was like that, because, from Happy Days now, they're not right for this, It was difficult. So, but then I said, okay, let's do some television. I started, like I said, chipping away and getting something here and there. And there is a little different, a little more different. And theater, more and more theater. And it started breaking open the cracks, Now these really, really cool projects have been coming my way. So, and then I also directed 3 independent films during that time period. One's called The Last Best Sunday, a very dramatic piece. It's on Amazon. No, it's on Tubi. And then a film called Moolah, which is on Amazon Prime, which I won like Best Outstanding Director, where it premiered at the Newport Beach Film Festival, and introduced Shailene Woodley. She was 13 years old. It was her first film. And now she's gone on to do a lot of stuff. She's pretty big, and great cast in Moolah. And I have several projects right now that I'm getting excited about that I might, I'm attached to direct, and we're trying to get it financed, set up, and some real traction on them lately. So I'm feeling optimistic I'll be doing that again. And then, of course, I went back to singing a little bit, brought that back into the fold.
I love the singing. I cranked up Spotify, and I started listening. And
cool.
It's great. I don't listen to the Great American Songbook that much, so it was nice to hear it. And you have an amazing voice.
Oh, thank you.
I did it in my research. I know Anson beat you to the singing on Happy Days. But,
right.
But there was one scene, at least, there may have been more, but at least one that I found where you did sing on Happy Days, and it was during the dance marathon.
Oh, right, the dance marathon.
The reason the dance marathon, that episode always stuck out in my head as a Jewish boy, is Henry Winkler wins by doing the Hava Nagila. He does.
Right.
And I always remember thinking to myself, like, like when people talk about, oh, you see something of your, of who you are in a show, like, Judaism. It wasn't pointed out that was a very traditional Jewish dance, but it was like, but I knew it, right?
Right.
And if you were just watching it, you'd be like, wow, Henry Winkler is doing a really kick-ass dance. That is really physical dance to win this thing.
Yeah.
I know, but you sang during that episode, and so, but I always remembered that.
I sang the anniversary waltz.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Which Jolson had made famous. It was a Jolson song. That's why they gave it to me.
That's awesome. So how often are you singing now? Do you tour? Do you do just special dates? Or
I was doing it more before the pandemic. Pandemic sort of cut into that. But I did recently, not back in November, I did my first symphony. I sang with the Hershey Symphony in Hershey, Pennsylvania, which I loved. It was fabulous. And then I did another date at a club in Florida. Oh, then I did another one down in at a performing arts center near Orlando not too long ago. But it hasn't really opened up in a big way yet. So I'm looking forward to getting back into doing it more often, and in between, hopefully more TV and film roles and maybe directing. But my manager and I have been talking, there's trying to set up, I might be doing a tour in Italy, which I would love, because Happy Days was very big in Italy. It still is. So they're talking about a tour for me there, also one in New Zealand and Australia, and maybe the UK. So that would be fun. I'd love to do that. And then continue doing more places in the US. So I used to work things out, some of the jazz clubs in LA and New York. I've done a bunch of really cool jazz clubs in New York City, which I love doing. So I hope to do more of that, and I probably will, once things open up. But I'm also working, what you heard on Spotify was probably, I have a CD out called Mostly Swinging.
Right.
And it's with a great big band, great jazz studio players from LA, wonderful arrangements by Willie Murillo. And, I loved it. It was a blast doing it. And it came out really well, really well. But I'm about to finish. We were close to finish. I'm doing another CD with a producer that's based in Nashville. And it's a little different. It's still going to be jazz standards, Great American Songbook, but not with a big band, more contemporary jazz configuration. And it's coming along great. I'm really excited. But we had to stop right in the middle of COVID. We were getting close to finishing. The plan is that I'm going there in about a month, and we're going to do the last 3 songs to finish it up, and then it'll come out this year. So we don't have a title yet for it, but I'm pretty excited about it. It's different than the one that you played, but I think it's really good.
As a musician, how do you get the word out? Growing up, you go to a music store and the new stuff would all be sitting out. It just seemed like as time went on, it became harder because digital didn't make things easier. Like it was nice to be able to go to a bookstore and just kind of bathe in the books, or a music store and just bathe in things and explore and find things. So it's got to be harder now to you got to really have a marketing machine to get people to know that. Even not just anybody, even if
I know, I don't know the answer to that. I sometimes ask the very same question to the producer that I'm working with, and I don't know. It's a different game now. It's very different. I guess what I'm hoping to make it easier to get that word out is obviously, the more you do it, people become aware of it. But on a bigger level, like you said, if you don't have a big machine behind you and a big record label that's going to put a lot of money into promotion and making sure because the producer will say, well, for us to get on the radio stations, if it's in the adult contemporary thing, it's going to cost crazy amount of money to hire a promoter to get it out there. If we do it in this category, it might not be as much. And, it just seems like, wow, what do you do? So, I'm hoping that could get a national platform to get it out there again, so maybe if I could get on some of the talk shows like I used to get on, back in the day and talk about it or sing a song on the show. So, I get another current television series, that'll help, So if I get a series again, then I can get the word out, and then probably.
Well, let's make that happen. All right. Last question. Your publicist comes to you with this idea. Do you fire him or do it? Hey, Don, Here's a way to get your music out there. We got you a gig on The Masked Singer.
Well, I don't fire him. It's funny because, several people have said, oh, you should do The Masked Singer. You should do it. I don't know. I watched it once or twice, and I guess I have mixed feelings about it. So the jury's still out on that one. Yeah.
Well, Don, I can't thank you enough for hanging out with me. This was so much fun. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. I had a lot of fun just shooting the breeze with you, and you raised some good topics and some interesting questions, and so I enjoyed it.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, one more, I still got it, and then we'll go.
Even with Jeff Dwoskin, I still got it.
Thank you so much.
I hope I pronounced it right.
You did. You nailed it. You got it.
Okay. All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
You take care of yourself. All right. Be
Thanks,
safe.
Scott. Bye. You too.
Bye-bye.
All right. How amazing was Don Most? He's still got it. He's still got it. Even on podcasts, he's still got it. That concludes my Happy Days trilogy. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed having it and bringing it to you. Definitely check out the smooth sounds of Don Most on one of the music streaming platforms. I'll put a link in the show notes, make it easy for you to jump right there and treat your ears to a little Don Most. Well, with the interview over, that can only mean one thing. It's time for a trending hashtag from the family of hashtags at hashtag Roundup. Download the free, always free hashtag Roundup app at the Google Play Store or iTunes App Store. Download the hashtag Roundup app. Get notified every time a game goes live. Tweet along with us, and one day one of your tweets may show up on a future episode of Live from Detroit, The Jeff Dwoskin Show. Today's hashtag, inspired, of course, by the conversation I had with Don Most, where we talked about catchphrases. This hashtag is hashtag outdated slang and phrases, brought to you by our friends at the Fresh Coast Tags, hosted by Mark and Paul, who is a super fan of the show. So great to be able to do a hashtag that he hosted back in the day. Hashtag outdated slang and phrases, a hashtag just to collect those terms and things that we say that have run their course. Tweet your own hashtag outdated slang and phrases to me at Jeff Dwoskin Show. I'll show you some love on the Twitter. In the meantime, here's some handpicked hashtag outdated slang and phrases for you to enjoy. All that in a bag of chips. Get you on the flip side. Where's the beef? Gag me with a spoon. Right on, brother. Hula la boo. Straight from the horse's mouth. What's up? 5-finger discount. These are some amazing hashtag outdated slang and phrases. Here's some more. As if. Actually, I like that one still. Check out MySpace. Sit on it. Wait a minute. Let's keep that one in. Call me. Hey, good looking. What you got cooking? Making whoopee. Suck it up, buttercup. Wicked awesome. Kiss my grits. Bring home the bacon. In it to win it. Hashtag outdated slang and phrases have never sounded so good. I'll be back in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. Kill 'em with kindness. Be kind, rewind, gone but not forgotten. Page me, she's the bee's knees. Raise the roof, all right. And our final hashtag outdated slang and phrases tweet. Let's blow this popsicle stand. Whoa, all right. Oh man, who knew there were so many phrases that we used to be so amazing that we just have gone the way of the dodo. Well, with the hashtag portion of the show complete, with the interview section of the show complete, it can only mean one thing. Episode 116 has come to a close. Where does the time go? I want to thank again my amazing guest, Don Most. And of course, I want to thank all of you for coming back week after week. It means the world to me. And I'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Jeff Dwoskin Show with your host, Jeff Dwoskin. Now go repeat everything you heard and sound like a genius. Catch us online at thejeffdwoskinshow.com or follow us on Twitter at Jeff Dwoskin Show. And we'll see you next time.